Well, joining me now is former world chess champion and chairman of the Renewed Democracy Initiative, Garry Kasparov, Ukrainian ambassador to the UK, Vadim Prystaiko, former head of the British Army, Lord Danet, plus Russia-born author and podcaster, Konstantin Kisin. OK, well, a great panel, first of all. Garry Kasparov, let me start with thank you for being in the studio. I greatly appreciate it. What's going on? You're a chess grandmaster. Can you work out what's at play here?
Look, as a chess grandmaster, I'm used to analyze facts. And I believe what we saw was a tip on the iceberg. There's so much still underwater. I don't think Prigozhin acted alone. I think that was a much bigger challenge to Putin's power by those in Russia, mostly GRU or KGB, who were not happy with the war on Ukraine. Don't forget, Russia is a mafia state. And there's so much money is at stake. And Putin basically is a liability for those who have been doing this business with hundreds of billions of dollars. Maybe we should look for answers for Prigozhin operation in Africa. I mean, we don't know enough. But what we know is that Putin's regime looked at the facing first real challenge as a Hollywood decoration. Just big decorations, nothing behind it. So Putin made a big statement. You show the statement, 9 a.m. It's in the morning. Who followed his orders? Nobody. What was the government? Nowhere to be seen. Parliament, Senate, Ministry of Interior, Ministry of Defense, they're all gone. So it's just, it's a colossus on clay feet. And I think what we saw was just the first act of the drama. I would not trust, the stories about these deals, because again, I think there's so much is behind the scene, and it was all about, I believe, commercial interests. But what is important is the way Prigozhin troops were received by Russians. I think it's more about corruption, because the name of the Prigozhin's operation was March for Justice. And I think it's the people instinctively demonstrated. That's this corruption regime, this Putin's regime, has no support, as it claimed. The whole story of Putin was popular has been just, destroyed by the march, which stopped for no clear reasons. Prigozhin could have taken Moscow in the next 12 hours.
But none of it really makes a lot of sense. General Danet, we've just been told the Russian state media reporting that Vladimir Putin will make a series of important announcements this evening. That'll be his first appearance since denouncing the Wagner mutiny. What's he going to say? What do you think is going on here?
Well, it'd be interesting to see what he is going to say, because on Saturday morning he had a lot of words, but he didn't have much substance at all and looked like a man pretty much caught in the headlights. So unless he's reinvented himself something clever, I think we're going to see more of the same. I think whichever way you look at it, he is now a weakened man. And what Prigozhin's extraordinary sort of march for justice towards Moscow showed was that Putin's got very little support. Where was his army? An army in an armed mutiny situation like...
Where were they?
...can do one of two things. It can oppose the mutineers, or it can do nothing. They chose to do nothing.
Right.
And this actually speaks volumes. Even the...
Is it the beginning of the end of Putin? Historically with Russia, when this thing happens, this kind of march, if you like, or assault on whoever's running the country, tends to be the end pretty quickly.
I think it's very much related also to what is going on in the battlefield in eastern Ukraine. And I think that's an extraordinary set of circumstances. The counter-offensive, which has been talked about for a long time, well-equipped, well-trained, well-prepared. A lot of preliminary operations have been going on. There will come a point, at a point in time and space, I don't know where or when the Ukrainian forces feel they've found some weak spots. And that's when they'll press with their attack brigades, and then anything could happen.
How diminished militarily are the Russians in Ukraine right now without the Wagner group?
Well, they are diminished because there's 25,000 or so fighters that were fighting. They were fighting side by side with them in Bakhmut until they've withdrawn. So numerically, the Russians are weaker. Also, the senior command and control from General Gerasimov down, that's now got question marks over it. How much authority can he actually deploy? And then, of course, you come to the Russian soldiers themselves. Most of them don't really want to be there.
Right.
They're poorly equipped, poorly trained, very poorly led at low level. Yes, they've got wonderful defensive positions, but if those defensive positions can be cracked into, then, frankly, anything could happen. Literally anything. We don't want to get too overly optimistic, and lives are involved here. Ukrainian lives are involved here. But it's quite possible they could break through and be very successful.
Yes, I agree. Ambassador Prystaiko, I mean, I can't even imagine what your weekend was like. I was gripped to this, literally watching cable news the entire weekend. What were you doing?
Same.
Yeah.
I was wasting 2 days of my time on weekend, quite rare thing, just to understand what is actually happening, how it can influence what is happening in our part. What I can tell you that for us, both of them, either Prigozhin or Putin, both of them are enemies. We understand that when they're fighting, it is a situation in our case, at least this 25,000 people or 6 more helicopters will now appear in Ukrainian skies. So that's what we're hoping. What's interesting also, it was not very well reflected, that what Prigozhin said before starting. He went and making...
I'm just interrupting you, Ambassador, one moment. We now have live pictures of Vladimir Putin. He's not actually talking yet. We're going to keep an eye on this. This will be an interesting statement. It's come, the press service for the Belarusian president, Alexander Lukashenko, has written on Telegram a lot of questions, stuffing, versions and assumptions. The first one will tell everything, answer everything very soon, follow the agenda. Again, some cryptic messaging coming out of Belarus there. What do you make of that?
I hope that we'll talk now about the Minister of Defense or Chief of Defense, and if it is the part of the agreement with Prigozhin. Remember, he went to Moscow saying that he is going to undermine the particular 2 individuals, not the Putin himself. So he was leaving sort of flexibility here. But having Lukashenko in picture, they can talk now about the even sort of deeper reunification between Belarus and Russia. They might tell...
It's so volatile. Of course, on the face of it, my first thought was this looks good for Ukraine. That just as you're launching a counter-offensive, you have the Russians in total chaos. Of course, knowing the character of Putin, it could be the reverse. He might decide to double down in Ukraine, to go even harder, more aggressively. That's a potential, right?
I agree with Gary that there are some circles in Russia which will be more interested. Some of them are not happy with what is happening. It doesn't mean that it won't go and escalate even higher. And the oligarchs, nothing can be done in Russia without oligarchs or consent. So what they want, whether they want to, to get rid of sanctions or they wanted to finish it up right now, right away. So let's escalate, let's finish it up, whatever the consequences.
Let me bring in Konstantin Kisin. Konstantin, you've been tweeting away about this the last 3 days. Fascinating, actually, to get your take on this. How are you seeing things as we're watching Vladimir Putin about to make some address? We have no idea what he's going to say, but what's your take on it?
Well, some very good points have been made so far. The one thing I would add is I think people haven't emphasized enough the fact that anybody who's going to attempt to replace Vladimir Putin is likely to be more nationalistic and more hardline than him at the moment. As you know, over the last quarter of a century, Vladimir Putin has removed everybody who's attempted to challenge him from a more liberal or more democratic position. One of those men is sitting to your left, Garry Kasparov, of course. And so what I think people forgot in the West is there's no Nick Clegg waiting in the wings to take over. This is a very serious situation. This is a nuclear nation with the potential for civil war. So I wouldn't get too excited about it, even though, of course, we would all want to see Russia less powerful in its terrible invasion of Ukraine. So I think that's one of the things to add. And the thing that is happening right now on our screens is Vladimir Putin giving a statement. I imagine we will see him attempting to reassert authority because what we have seen over the last many days is that his authority is certainly in question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, Gary, you've been shaking your head there, so I'll come...
It's absolute nonsense. I mean, it's total misunderstanding of the nature of any dictatorship. After 23 years, Putin is a spine of the system. You cannot take spine away and put someone in the place. Whoever comes after Putin will start negotiating with Americans, with Ukrainians. There's no doubt about it. That's what happened after Stalin's death. So you cannot have another dictator replacing Putin because he's the center of the decision-making process. And now it seems that he's no longer capo di tutti capi. He's not the final referee in all these negotiations between various groups. So that's why it's like, saying, oh, Stauffenberg also brought some questionable people with him, and after Hitler, we could have somebody worse. No, absolutely not.
But if you take your mafia analogy, for argument's sake, in the mafia, if the head boss got taken out, they would replace him with often somebody even worse.
It takes time. Before you have somebody else, they have to negotiate. It's more like a Politburo, which always better because they have to negotiate.
Well, what do you really think in your bones is going to happen here, Gary?
Oh, I think it's this growing opposition to Putin because he's losing the war. There's a huge commercial interest that is not interested to continue unwinnable war. They know this war cannot be won. And again, what will be the outcome of this fight? I don't know. But I don't think Putin will stay for too long, because if Russian history is any guide, the bad wars always led to the change of the regime.
Ambassador, what does victory look like here? Is there any potential, as some people have called, for Ukraine to cede any of the territory that the Russians have taken? Or is your position still implacable? You do not give them an inch?
That is a position that we are not going to give an inch to anybody. And Russians the first. And second, I'd like to say...
But what about Crimea, for example, which was taken years ago?
Crimea as well.
You'd like to see that?
I'd like myself to see it. That's true.
Yeah.
And by the way, we already started to liberate some of the places which were under occupation since 2014, not just recently acquired lands. So that's what we are already doing.
So do you feel total victory is now very achievable? In fact, potentially a lot more achievable than it looked last week?
Much better now, that's true. This jar with the spiders in it, who will get out of it will be wounded and will be weakened. I totally agree. And if you want to, talking about the analogy, historical analogies, if you remember when Gorbachev got back after the coup, it only took 4 months until the whole system collapsed afterward.
We've got some quotes now from Putin tonight. General Danet, I'll bring this to you. The organisers of this rebellion, he says, cannot but understand that they will be brought to justice. Everyone understands this. That is criminality that is aimed at weakening the country. From outside, we are threatened. However, the organisers of this rebellion have betrayed those people who were bribed into this organisation. So he's saying apparently also that society has consolidated. There's not much evidence of that. But he's suggesting from that, unless I'm misreading it, that the Wagner group have betrayed Russia and they have to be dealt with. But there's no sign from the Wagner group that they're fearing that going to happen.
Well, he said that on Saturday morning, that these people were brought to justice.
They didn't do anything.
By Saturday evening, he said that they would be allowed to go their way. So he's now reverting to his first speech. What do you believe? What do you understand? I mean, I think he's lashing out. I think he's showing further signs of weakness by holding completely differing points of view.
Is he done, Putin, do you think?
I think he's done. And go back to what I said before, I think when the Ukrainian army's counterattack really gets going, then I think he will be completely done. And I think the big point on the battlefield to remember is that if the Ukrainians manage to break in and break through, they haven't got to defeat the Russian army everywhere. They've just got to make the average Russian soldier think he's lost. And when an army thinks it's lost, it's lost. And that's what they've got to try and achieve. And they can do that.
Some more quotes here. Konstantin, I'll bring you in here. Putin, most of Wagner are also patriots. He closed his speech by saying President Lukashenko, obviously the Belarusian president, should be thanked for his role in this to achieve a peaceful resolution. It's a patriotic duty of everyone that has saved us. Thank you. So some kind of mixed messaging, although I guess what he's trying to say tonight is that the organisers are the culpable ones. What does that mean, though? What's he going to do?
Well, as I said, as I predicted, he was going to attempt to reassert authority. But on the other hand, he doesn't want to make enemies of 25,000 of his most capable soldiers who are quite loyal to Evgeny Prigozhin, as far as we know. But I think there was a misunderstanding about the previous point that I made. I wasn't suggesting that a coup would make Putin stronger. What I was saying was that a lot of the resistance to the regime at the moment isn't actually focused on Vladimir Putin. A lot of the criticism is of his defense minister, Shoigu, and the head of the armed forces, Gerasimov. And that, I think, is where this has all come from. This conflict has been brewing for many months now, with a war of words between Prigozhin and the Ministry of Defense. And so what I was saying, and I think this is important to say, the liberal democratic voices like Gary have been forced out of Russia. And so much of the resistance to Vladimir Putin isn't people who want democracy and stability. It's people who feel that the war is going badly, as he says, and they want someone to come in and take charge. So it remains to be seen how this one actually plays out.
Yeah, apparently, I'm just reading some reports on Twitter here that apparently he said the uprising was doomed to fail, and his organisers, even though they lost their sense of right and wrong, couldn't have failed to realise that. He also seems to say that Ukraine was involved somehow and calls the revolt revenge for their failed counter-offensive. He then ranted about Wagner's treason a bit more, and then it cut out. He didn't actually announce anything, says someone on Twitter here. Gary, what do you make of that? Mad rantings?
Yes, it's he can keep talking, but nothing is happening. And what you just said now just doesn't make any sense.
No, none of it makes sense.
No.
Do you think he'll still be in charge in a month's time?
Months, maybe. Definitely not within a year. Probably, 3 to 6 months.
Ambassador, what do you think?
It will be bloody, it will be dirty, but he's going down.
General?
And there might be a churn. Someone might replace him, and then someone might replace that person. I think the second replacement could be more favourable to the West.
And just a final point, General, what message does all this send to China, who may have been considering attacking Taiwan? Is this a marker in the sand that if you do this kind of thing as a dictatorship, that actually it can backfire pretty horrendously?
The Chinese should think very carefully about taking on the world over Taiwan. Actually, the Chinese are patient people. Just give it time. They would be most unwise to take any lessons out of this. If there is a lesson, actually, it's a coup such as Putin tried to mount on Kyiv 24th of February last year. It did not work. So just don't go there.
General, Ambassador, Grandmaster, great to see you all. Thank you very much. Great panel tonight. Konstantin, thank you as well for joining me. Much appreciated. A lot going on in Russia, a lot going on in Ukraine. Going to be a fascinating few days and months to see how this all plays out. So I'm joined now by Farida and Hamid. Well, welcome to both of you to Piers Morgan Uncensored. Farida, let me just start with you, if I may. What is your understanding of what the new Taliban ruling is in relation to female television presenters in Afghanistan?
Thank you so much. Last week, the Taliban announced a new decree and restriction on women, especially for the women who are appearing on the screens and they presenting the news or other social programs. So my understanding from these decrees that the Taliban want to remove this step by step from public life, and they decided that women should be just sitting at home and they are not allowed to go out. This is my understanding, and this is a big concern that I have about this issuing of degrees that the Taliban just in 9 past months, they just putting on the women.
Hamid, you and other male presenters decided that you were going to protest on behalf of your female colleagues by also wearing masks on air. Tell me about that decision.
By the time when we received the decree, when we were ordered to, especially our female colleagues, to put mask on while on air, so we collectively decided to go for a strike and support our female colleagues at this very critical situation. And that the message that we want to come through with this move was to let the facto authorities that this is not the way that they want to impose Islam for us, or they want to define Islam. And at this very critical situation, women, especially our female colleagues, did not feel alone, that no one is there behind to support them. Altogether, we decided, we went on air with mask up, and it has a very huge reactions, or on the social media as well. We were being supported by the civil community as well. We decided, we went on that, we supported them, and we will do that. We ended the protest though, but still we have the same stance on that. We still want to support our female colleagues at any time with any means that we can do it. That was a civil gesture because we knew there are so many different misinterpretation of hijab. That's why we opposed that. If it's something, we never opposed any decree by the Taliban. Why we oppose this is because there is no clear definition. They have to clear it. What is hijab? Hijab in Islam for us, we are also Muslims, we as well know what is hijab. For female colleagues, like hijab is to cover the whole body, the entire body, except like from forehead to chin. It's all fine. Their hands, it should be visible. It's not a big deal. Like putting mask or asking them to wear mask is something that they want to gradually remove women from the society, or they don't want them to give the rights that they have as human beings. And this is a small step being taken by the de facto authorities in order to facilitate for a bigger move. The bigger move I mean is that maybe in a very short span of time, they will be asked just to not appear on the screen anymore, or just they will be asked to sit inside homes, and you're not allowed to get out of your homes without any female muharram, as they already clearly stated that. So that's why we protested, and so we ended that. But still, we have the same. Our view hasn't been changed on the matter. As long as we do not satisfied with a clear interpretation of hijab, we will support this, and we will still remain on our stance very clearly.
Well, Hamid, I think it's very courageous of you men to be doing this in support of your female colleagues. Farida, let me ask you, it's also very courageous for both of you to be speaking out to the world's media in the way that you are right now. Are you not concerned or fearful of what the Taliban may do if you do interviews like this?
Yeah, I'm concerned. I think that before that the Taliban announced decrees about the hijab, they are get stepped some announced other orders about women and especially girls. They close the schools for the girls. They just remove all the organizations support the women, and now they announced that the women, while they're appearing on the screen, they should be covering their face. And in this order, they clearly state that the best hijab is burqa, that the woman should be wearing burqa. The things that is impossible while we are appearing on a screen, just we wearing a burqa, this is impossible. And we have a fear that when the Taliban just watching this interview, they will be take some actions like now, while our male colleagues wearing masks, they have some issues. Like they in a social media, they posted that while male colleagues wearing masks, they should be wearing shawl or they should be wearing burqa as well, that they show their solidarity with their female colleagues. So we have a concern not just about our security job, like we will be lost our job. We have other security fears, and maybe they target us, or maybe they target other family members. We are concerned about all these things.
Well, I think it's extremely courageous of you both to be doing this. And Farida, let me ask you, when I had the Taliban spokesman, Suhail Shaheen, on my program recently, he was adamant that women had nothing to be fearful about, that they would be supportive towards women, and that girls would be allowed back to school in high school. Are you seeing any evidence of any of this?
When the de facto authority of the Taliban, they spoke with some foreign international media or others, they say that we working on the policy that close or that open schools for the senior girls or the girls in all around the country, and they said we work on the policy that how the women can work on the governmental organizations and private organizations. They say that we work on the policy that how make the proper way that the women work outside home. They just say about the policy. But look, in the past 9 months, what the Taliban do for the women, they just gave orders, they just issue a decrees, and they put more restriction and limitation on the women. But in Afghanistan, maybe their families out of Afghanistan, they go to schools, they go to universities, and they just analyzing these situations, and they never come to Afghanistan. Like I never have seen Suhail Shaheen come to Afghanistan. They just, what is going on in Afghanistan? I showed that he never come to Afghanistan. Just they talk with international media from online, and they have other maybe something that they have some immunity and in the foreign countries, and they never come to Afghanistan. They just give how the situation are going on, and when they talk, they never talk about what is reality in Afghanistan. I'm in Afghanistan, I'm in Kabul, and around the world, the people now say watching us that we're covering our face. Just you ask Sohail Shaheen that you said that we will allow all girls that they should go into school. We work on a policy that the women should be work on the private and governmental organization. But why you put more restriction on the women? Like why are they appearing on the screens? They should be covering on their face. And this 21st century, around the world, the country get promotions and development, but in Afghanistan, it's like a kind of joke that the women, while they're appearing on the screen, they should be covering their face. As a woman, when I analyze these situations, I think that the Taliban they're kidding with us. Like they show the world, they do that kind of extremism actions like they do in a remote area of Afghanistan. Now in Kabul, they do the same action with us and they obligated us to wearing our face.
And Hamid, finally, and briefly, if you don't mind, what is your view of the decision by President Biden to withdraw all the American forces overnight, and indeed Britain and other forces withdrew as well? It was so sudden and seemed to just surrender the country back to the Taliban. What is your view of that?
So they would have left even maybe that decision was taken by that government is something that they would not stay here forever in Afghanistan. They were supposed to leave someday, but left in a very chaotic situation that the world knows how the people were suffering. You know, they built 20 years, the government here with trillions of dollars spent, with thousands of lives lost here in Afghanistan, but they give up in a very, very, very simple way. And they they handed over the government to the people that they were fighting over 20 years with them, and they considered them as a terrorist or whatever they called them. No one accepted that. No one expected something that will happen to the Afghans. Anyway, they came right now, the Taliban or the de facto authorities in the country. Now they should take some better steps, not limiting the women's issue only. We have humanitarian crisis here. We are facing economical situation here in the country. People are angry. People do not have food to eat. They just focus on the women issues. They're just trying to crack down the women from the society or whatever they want to do. They have to take some bigger steps. They have to make a better relationship with the international community. They should take a better steps in order to have a good relationship with the outside world, in order to recognize their government. If they keep doing this thing, I'm sure that no one or no country in the world will recognize them, and we people will suffer the way we're suffering, the people are suffering. Their government, anyway, they can survive, but they should think about the nation, that they're going through a very difficult situation at the moment. Women are not only the part of the society that they're focusing on. There are other issues, as I already mentioned that. So better they should do something for this country. Now the authorities, now they have responsibility. Government coming to the power or ruling the people is not just something that they have to do. They have a bigger responsibility. They used to fight a government. They used to fight the international community with guns. Now they have to provide the facility for these people, the nation that suffered a lot when they were fighting, like the international community. We were the victims of war, and right now we are the victims of politics as well. We suffer a lot, and we have very small gains right now. We have to save them. People were thinking that the Taliban have changed. Even the international community thought that back in the mid-1990s when they were ruling us. So once they came here on the power, on the very first day, I remember it was 17th August, where their spokesperson very clearly said that the women will have their rights, the people will have their rights, they will make Afghanistan better, there will be future for the Afghans. But these things were all, I think they forgot what they have promised the people on the very first day. People were very eager that, okay, a new government came, the war ended, there's no killing, there's no bloodshed. But right now, nothing as such, no war, no bloodshed, but the The people are hungry. The people are going through a very difficult situation. They should take care of such things. They should think that, okay, right now 30 million, nearly 40 million people are living in this geography. So they need service. They need, even if they want to remove women from the public, it means that they want to eradicate the half of population of the country. The population will in the past 20 years help the nation to progress. They contributed a lot, very actively in the society. How come you just, with a degree an issue, want to remove them from the society? They helped us a lot and led them. And everyone, like Farida herself sitting behind me, like by my side, she studied for more than 20 years. She suffered a lot. She wanted to have a future in the country. She wanted to work for the betterment or for the progress of this country, for the people of Afghanistan. If you want to sideline her, you're not just sidelining herself. It is just like you want to eradicate her hope, her future, whatever she has, the plan for the Afghans, and what the achievements that he had in the last 20 years is just, like removing her. So the same like her, we have like thousands of the people in this country where they suffered a lot, where they struggled a lot. It's not easy for them to be removed from the society or the way that they want to work. So Islam has given them the rights. We have to give them their rights. This is their basic need. Like right now, millions of girls are out of the schools. They're deprived. There's no any hope for them to return back. They were given promises that they will return back to the schools. They returned on the day where they were promised, but they sent them back with like thousands of the people, millions of girls with the teary eyes. They went back to their homes with no hope for them. So this is not the way to govern. It's better to be very practical. It's better to think. Like we have to adjust ourselves with the reality of today. And the reality is that this generation that is talking to you is totally different from the generation that they were rolling back in 1996 to 2000. So we are not ready to accept the things that contradict both the culture and our religion. And we'll stand, we will resist as long as we can do it. We know that there might be many threats, there might be many risks, but if we do not accept risks today, it means that we are going to surrender very easily and we are going to give up very easily. It's something that we don't want to do. We have to make a change altogether. We do not want to oppose them with any form, with any means, but as long as the decrees, the announcement contradict Islam and culture, we will stand. We don't. I don't think that I'm scared of anything. Anything happens, it's okay. Let's happen. But let the other generation, which comes after us, at least live in peace, in prosperity, and dignity with what we are doing today. And that's what I hope. If they're watching the interview we're doing, they should consider that we are not the generation that they were ruling back in 1996. We are changed. We have different mentality. We want to all together want to peace or live in peace and coexistence and work for a better country. That's what we want from them, and that's what let's contribute. Let's not oppose each other. This is the message that we have. By issuing ordering, you cannot constrain this limit. You will limit it maybe for a very short span of time, but in the long term, this is something that might be not good for their government. And if you want to govern, you're governing us, the people, the nation. If the nation is not happy from you, they do not want to coordinate with you, the behavior that you have, I'm not sure that any government can survive without their nation or without having a very close relationship. This is not what I mean. Is like let's support each other. Let's take a very close look at the reality of our today. Let the women get back to their jobs. So they have been wearing hijab the way they're asking them. People, we are Muslims from long back, and our female, our women have been wearing hijab, practicing Islam from the very long back. It's not like this is the first year, 1 year or 2 years that we are practicing Islam. It's not the way. It's just, like they are making pretexts in order to remove women. I hope they consider these things. Let the women get back to their life. Let them enjoy their freedom that God has given them, that Islam has given them. Let the girls come back to schools. Millions of girls are waiting just for a decree, asking them to return to their schools. There are millions of people. It's not only millions of people. There are millions of hopes, millions of lives. Yeah, these are what we want from them, and I hope they consider we are supportive. We are from the same nation. We are the same people. If you don't join hands together, I don't think that we will survive or they will survive. And I hope they watch this and reconsider or revive their decisions or their decrees that they are ordering or they have been issuing. And since they took over, the international community knows, the world knows that they are just issuing decrees on women issues only. There are so many other subjects. Come on, let's work for those things as well. Let's get rid of the bigger problems that we have. Why women only? I don't know. No one is asking them why women only. I have watched your interview with Soil Shine. She has 2 daughters. Both of them are going to school. Both of them attend school. They may have a better future maybe in the other countries. But people like Farida who is sitting here, where she's, as I tell, like studied more than 20 years, she will just, like end it up with having no future with nothing. But it's a double standard. They have to understand that we know that their children, offspring, are going to schools, attending universities, international kind of a thing. But we do not have this right to go to our school inside the country. This is what we don't expect them. We don't want at any cost. This generation will oppose it at any cost. Even if it costs our life, we will stand no matter what happens at the end.
Well, Hamid and Farida, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I admire your courage enormously as fellow journalists. I think it's disgraceful what is going on in your country. I think it's disgraceful the way we abandoned your country. I think it's horrendous the way that women are being treated. And as Hamid said, there are many other horrendous issues going on as well. But I admire both of you for what you've been doing. It takes a lot of guts to do this. And I wish you all the very best. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us.
I mentioned earlier about Jeremy Clarkson, who... I get on fine with Clarkson now, but just to remind viewers, he did punch me in the head, and I've got a scar here which comes up when I have a tan like I do now from his right fist. So it's not like we've been the easiest of easiest of bedfellows over the years. I've literally borne the scars of Clarkson. So I'm not going to be his greatest cheerleader in a moment of misfortune. All I would say is this, is that he could not have issued a more sincere apology than he did today. And as I've always suspected about the woke brigade, the moment you do that, they don't accept it. And by the way, Harry's the king of the wokies. They just chuck it straight back in your face. And I mean, Tessa, we didn't discuss this, but here's my problem with it. Can't he apologise enough? I mean, is there no apology that's acceptable?
Did you not rummage around in the small print? It's because the Grand Tour's apparently been pulled by Amazon Prime. That apology...
Well, we don't know. That's not been confirmed yet.
Come on,
not
wake up and smell the coffee.
I'd rather wait and have it confirmed.
Why do you think Clarkson apologised? Why deep down in your tippy-top?
Do you think he should be cancelled from everything?
To be honest, I think we've had quite a lot of Clarkson over the years, and time to bring on a fresh lot. Yeah, I would have no problem.
But you think he should be cancelled for that reason?
He's not been cancelled. He's still platformed everything.
Yeah,
you were just boasting about him being cancelled.
But do you think he should be cancelled?
I think maybe if the Amazon Prime think it's time for them to shuffle off, then perhaps it's
well, we don't, like I say, they haven't confirmed that. I mean,
you wouldn't answer the question. Do you think he should?
Well, that's a good question.
I think there should be a punishment for that level of vitriol. I would like to see, and don't shoot me there, I would like to see some modification to include misogyny in those hate laws.
Really?
We're talking on a day.
Okay.
Yeah,
no,
we are. We're talking on a day when the term institutional misogyny is being touted around in the police.
So what about all the hideously misogynistic things that Harry says in his book?
Oh, not back to that. Not back to the prep school teacher whom he made laugh.
Yeah.
When he was 11 years old.
No, the one.
Would you have preferred that Harry whitewashed
Tessa, you've got to let me
childhood?
finish. I'm talking about the matron that he called ugly and greasy and didn't make the boys horny. I'm talking about the newspaper executive who he's absolutely viciously misogynist about. I'm talking about Camilla, who he calls a dangerous villain. Blah, 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 blah. The book is laced with misogyny. So I agree with you.
Can't be one rule for one
misogyny
and
should
one
be
for
taken
another.
more seriously. What about he starts with himself?
No. First of all, would you have preferred that he pretended he was a saint at prep school and never did that cruel
wasn't my question.
Lord of the Flies
It
style
wasn't my
behaviour that
question.
children do?
My
Would
question-
you have preferred?
No,
What
Tessa,
about the matron?
Tessa,
Do you know,
my
interestingly-
question to you was very simple. why should he be allowed to be a misogynist?
I didn't.
But anyone who dares to be a misogynist about his wife, he wants to get cancelled.
I just don't think you can compare the
All right.
idea of someone
Of course you can't.
being cellular, liked on a cellular level, paraded down the street naked, having human excrement thrown at her, with describing a tabloid editor as something. I don't know
what he said about a female editor was actually pretty well up there.
Was it sexist? It was just unpleasant.
Actually, it was misogynist, sexist and revolting, yeah. But anyway, let's move on. I want to talk to Stephen Bates, former Guardian royal correspondent. Stephen, I didn't even know the Guardian had a royal correspondent, so that was a bit of a shock to me. So congratulations on that title. But thank you for joining me. Look, I wanted to get you on, not because I expect you to launch a spirited, full frontal defence of tabloid newspapers, but I do think you raised very interesting points in your column about all this, which is that Harry's real point of visceral hatred is that the British tabloids in particular were directly to blame for Princess Diana, his mother's death. And you wrote a column really saying that isn't borne by facts.
No, that's right. I mean, I watched the ITV interview the other Sunday, like millions of other people did. And as you see, we had this riff about the tabloids and the paparazzi causing his mother's death. That wasn't actually what I discovered and found. I was the Guardian's man in Brussels at the time, and I was sent down first thing that morning to help the coverage, of course. And I got on into a cab at the Gare du Nord to go to the Guardian office. And the cabbie, this is 5 or 6 hours after the accident, said that driver must have been mad to drive into that tunnel at that speed. He said there's a very bad camber and there's a twist in the tunnel. And anyone who drives in at that sort of speed, you have to stick to 30 kilometres an hour, he said. Anyone who went in at the sort of speed that car was being driven at must have been mad. And we now know, after the inquest, which I also covered 8 years later at the High Court, that Henri Paul, the chauffeur that evening, was high on drink and drugs. He hadn't been expecting to work, which is why he was drunk, and he'd never driven a Mercedes before. And Mohammed Al-Fayed instructed him to drive Dodi and Diana right across Paris, a route he didn't particularly know, in a very fast car that he wasn't used to driving. He had a Mini himself, and he showed off. He was showing off to the paparazzi who were outside the Ritz Hotel. They could have stayed at the Ritz Hotel because they had a suite there. They were routed out of the suite by Mohammed Al-Fayed, who wanted them to stay at his apartment. And that was the terrible thing that happened.
And the other crucial thing, I think...
versus...
And the other point I was going to make, which I think is really important to this, is that Harry talks sort of vaguely about there were flashing lights as his mother and the car she was in crashed. In fact, the paparazzi were not within 1 kilometre of the car when it crashed. That came out in the inquest. So there were none of them anywhere near the tunnel or the car. Yeah. What is completely true is that once they caught up with the car and they realised it had crashed, then some of these ghouls did actually try and take pictures of Diana lying in the back of the car. Right. And that is completely unforgivable. But it's not true that they were right with the car as it went into the tunnel, blinding the driver potentially with their flashbulbs.
That's absolutely right. They were on Vespers. Vespers don't outrun Mercedes being driven at speed. They were behind. They were admittedly chasing the Mercedes and probably trying to catch up with it at lights or something like that. But they weren't in front of it. And so therefore, they didn't cause the accident. They indeed did behave like ghouls afterwards. These were continental paparazzi, it has to be said. They weren't British journalists. They weren't British photographers. They were Italians and French.
Right.
Maybe they wanted to sell photographs to the British tabloids, but I doubt very much whether the British tabloids, which by then had learnt their lesson,
well, I can tell you. Well, I can tell you for a fact that I was in the Daily Mirror newsroom in the early hours of that morning, about 5 a.m., when we were offered pictures of Diana lying in the back of the car. Didn't know if she was dead or alive at that stage. It turned out she actually died, I think, on the way to hospital when she got to hospital. But these pictures were offered to us, and I not only refused to even countenance using them, I rang the head of the agency who'd sent them in, advised him very strongly to withdraw them from everywhere he'd sent them and to leave the country and keep his head down because it might cost him his entire business. So this idea that we were sitting there and salivating over pictures of Diana in the back of the car is completely untrue.
There are many things you can blame the tabloids for about their royal coverage of Diana and Charles and the breakup of all that marriage, but that is not one of them. It seems to have embittered Harry very deeply. You can understand that, but as I think you were saying earlier, it's probably time, unfortunately, that he should get over it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I would never tell anyone to get over the death of a parent and that thing, but I certainly think that him continuing to apportion direct blame on a particular section of the British media for the crash that killed his mother is just, unfortunately, it's not borne out by the facts. Jenny Bond, you were covering... Stephen, thank you very much indeed for joining me. Jenny, you listening to all that? You were obviously covering all this. I mean, to me, it's a very important point. You can have a view, as Harry and William both do, that the paparazzi are the enemy for them because they follow them all around at all times. And obviously Diana got more attention than I think anybody else did. And the rules did all change after she died, actually. But that doesn't mean that the press, the British press, were to blame for her death. That's just not true.
No, it's not true, and I've never bought into the conspiracy theory whatsoever, but Harry seems to want to revive that. He was traumatised by what happened, however it happened, and he has not been able to get over it. And for that, that's why I say we have to have some sympathy with him. But, you know, in the book he suggested that he would like, and William would like, to have the inquest reopened, or the inquiry reopened, though he doesn't know what you gain from it. Obviously, that's not going to happen. But I don't know how he will ever be reconciled with what happened to his mother. Never mind be reconciled.
No, well, you have to... Look, Jenny, thank you very much for joining me. I mean, look, the bottom line, Anne, you've got to stick to facts. The inquest was unbelievably thorough.
And she wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
And she wasn't wearing a seatbelt. The car was speeding. The driver was drunk and had drugs in his body. And he was basically... He lost control of the car on a bump in the underpass. I mean, that's what happened.
It is... Go, sorry.
The one person who survived that crash was the only person who was wearing a seatbelt.
I interviewed him. I had the first interview with Trevor Rees-Jones, the bodyguard.
And does he uphold Harry's version?
Well, I mean, look, he wore the seatbelt and that saved his life. The others weren't wearing seatbelts.
But does he does he say that they were trying to escape the paparazzi?
No, because they weren't. I'm trying to make. The paparazzi were over a kilometre behind them. They were nowhere near the car. So it wasn't the paparazzi. And by the way, as Stephen rightly pointed out, these weren't British press. These were foreign paparazzi.
But just talking about this, reliving it, even in a sort of fourth-hand version, it's horrific, it's painful. I think what we need to do is, I know this is going to be difficult for you, Piers, and perhaps you too, Anne, but is cut Harry some slack, lift ourselves above the parapet and think, what is the royal family for? It is our first family. It's a great British brand. Do we want it to look magnanimous? Do we want it to represent redemption and forgiveness? If we do,
what about him?
He's
not forgiving.
He's
not being magnanimous. He's doing none of that. He's doing none of that.
And I can tell you the best way to do that is not to invite those two anywhere near the coronation. But thank you, Tessa. Thank you, Anne. Appreciate you coming in. Still to come, the Brit Awards goes gender neutral to be more inclusive, and with obvious predictability, all 5 nominees for Best Artist identify as men. Do gender-neutral awards exclude women? We are going to have a gender-neutral panel if these two carry on. Go on, give each other a hug.
No, that's certainly not. I don't do that.
Well, my next guest is true Hollywood royalty with a glittering career spanning 7 decades, awarded a damehood by Prince Charles for her services to charity in 2015. And next week we'll be part of a Dames in Jags procession at the Queen's Jubilee pageant. I'm thrilled to say Dame Joan Collins.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great, but I want to congratulate you on having your own show.
Thank you.
I think it's great.
Well, it's lovely to it doesn't really feel like my own show until you're here.
Oh,
I feel like you're anointing me. Like it's almost after the Queen, it's the next best thing to a royal visit.
Oh, please. Come on.
Now, you're part of the dames in Jags. What is this?
The hags in Jags, I call it. Well, this thing is going to be so enormous. I mean, so fantastic. It's going. Have you ever been to the Macy's Thanksgiving parade? It's going to be like that. They're going to have all these floats. They're going to have people dancing and singing and all kinds of people on it. And then we are coming down in these amazing vintage Jaguars, open. I've got a white one, and Twiggy's there, and Dame Darcy Bussell, and I can't remember who the others are. You must have it written down somewhere.
A load of great dames.
Well, I think so. And then we are going to go around waving gracefully, I hope, to the populace who are going to line up. And then we're going to go and hopefully go into one of the boxes and watch the rest of it. But it's very exciting because I'm such a monarchist and I'm such a royalist and I love the Queen so much that to have been asked is really.
You've been in movies 70 years. The Queen has been on the throne 70 years.
I know.
It's quite amazing. And there you are together. But she's a remarkable woman, isn't she?
She is the most inspirational woman, I think, that ever has lived in my lifetime. I don't know. I never knew Mother Teresa or Joan of Arc, but I mean, they were probably pretty good. But no, she is, because she's so down to earth and gentle and humorous, and she's got through all of these dreadful things that have happened to her. I mean, they really have been some awful things that she's had to deal with, and she does it with such grace. And the fact that she has never ever commented on anything that's going on.
No interviews.
Nothing. But even an aside, because you know there are people that are lip reading, and they could say that she said, "Oh, I think this play is ghastly," as we all do when we go to see something. But the last time I saw her, it was at Buckingham Palace, and we were talking about Pygmalion, My Fair Lady, because some students gave a performance, and she's so knowledgeable about the theatre. And we had a really very nice chat. No, I just love her. She's been a part of my life. I kept a scrapbook of her wedding to Prince Philip when I was a schoolgirl. We were all madly in love with Prince Philip at school, you know, because he was so good looking.
She must really miss Philip, don't you think? I mean,
well, after, 74 years of being married? Yes, well, look at that man who just died with a broken heart.
I know, well, the story from Texas.
I know.
I mean, imagine, they've got 4 children.
Oh, no.
The teacher had been teaching there for many years. She gets shot dead by this lunatic. And then within 24 hours, her husband literally dies of a broken heart. This was his childhood sweetheart. But those 4 kids now have no parents.
Oh, my God. It's
heartbreaking.
It's beyond terrible what goes on with these things. I don't understand why, if somebody posts pictures of themselves on social media, buying guns, talking about guns, saying, I want to kill people, why they can't be... why the FBI or the CIA or whoever go after them.
He literally put on Instagram pictures of the 2 AR-15 rifles. But here's the point. He was 18... And when he turned 18 a couple of weeks ago, he was legally allowed to buy these guns. He went and bought these guns. He couldn't have bought a beer. That would have been illegal. He couldn't buy a Kinder Surprise chocolate egg. They're illegal in the whole of America because the toys may choke you. But an 18-year-old boy could buy 2 AR-15 semi-automatic rifles and then go and do what he did. And it's that inconsistency of the laws which I find so completely baffling. But I always say to people, you and I have worked in America a long time, lived there. It's embedded in the culture. They have half of the world's guns are in America. Nearly half of the population of America own guns. So you're talking about 150, 60 million people in a country who have guns and therefore support their usage. And they believe passionately that the Second Amendment of the US Constitution entitles them, as ratified by the Supreme Court, to own firearms.
Well, I can understand that you might want to own a firearm, a small Glock or something, but to own 2 assault rifles or to own machine guns, that's what I don't understand. And I don't believe that 40% or whatever percentage you said of the population goes along with that. I think that they want to have a gun, and if somebody comes into their property, they can shoot them. But assault rifles? I mean,
what's
it's
happening
really
with young people, Joe? I mean, the last 2 massacres, the one in the supermarket, the white supremacist, and now this one, they're both 18 years old. The Sandy Hook shooter was 20. What is going on with these young men that they're so completely detached from reality and so angry that they want to go and commit these atrocities.
Well, I have a theory that young people today are brought up and love violent movies,
Video
violent
games.
games.
This one did.
Violent,
he liked Call of Duty.
They live on them. They're brought up from the age of 4 or 5.
I think it desensitizes them.
Of course it does. It's like porn. The same thing. It desensitizes, which is why I think that women are being abused so much.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why that is allowed. Because Rosie and I, we watch a lot of television. And so many things we say, we can't watch this. The whole screen is covered in blood. You know, there's 4,000 people being killed. And there's the most awful thing, that women being abused and slapped and hit. And it's just not right. It's not what I wasn't allowed to see certain movies. Do you remember? They used to have U certificate, universal.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to see anything like that. And I think that's probably, you know, my generation is more sensitive.
I think it's a lot of things. I think the desensitizing is definitely part of it. They all seem to be addicted to violent video games. I think that I think medication. America's a very heavily medicated country.
Well, it's not just Americans.
No, but I'm saying I don't think they have any more of that than many countries, or indeed more mental health issues. What they do have is mentally deranged people who can get very easy legal access to weapons of war. I mean, when you see these guns, these are like machine guns. Machine guns are actually illegal in America, but these are semi-automatic. They can fire a bullet every time you pull a trigger.
And obviously, if you're going to buy something like that, you're going to kill somebody.
Well, he bought 375 rounds of ammunition.
And the guy who was in the shop has the FBI faulted this guy?
It seems completely crazy, doesn't it?
It is crazy. Well, thank God it can't happen in this country.
Yeah. Well, it happened here in Dunblane, in Scotland.
But that was how long ago?
1996,
okay.
and I was actually editing the Daily. Well, I was editor of the Daily Mirror at the time, and you see, Britain wasn't a gun culture country at the time.
No.
Very few civilians owned guns, so it was an easier campaign. Really, we all came together, left and right. It wasn't political. I always say this to my American friends. I don't know why politics gets involved with this. This is about saving kids from being shot dead at school. But, you know, we campaigned, we got the laws changed, and we haven't had a school shooting since. America's had 27 school shootings this year.
I can't, you know, I mean, can you imagine being a mother and hearing that?
No.
Or even being a mother now and sending your kids to school and thinking, are they going to be safe?
Just,
I mean, you always thought your children were going to be safe.
I actually emailed a friend of mine who's one of the Dunblane mothers, because every time one of these things happens, I just can't imagine what they go through. And I sent her a note, and she replied a very nice, heartfelt email. But it always takes them straight back when they have this to
of course it does.
And their kids never grow up, and just what they have to go through is so unthinkable.
I think the whole thing is unthinkable, and I think the whole thing of somebody mentally wanting to kill children, babies, which of course is what is going on in Ukraine as well, but we don't seem to talk about that anymore.
Well, that's another thing, you know, Ukraine's disappearing from the news agenda,
I know.
which is what Vladimir Putin wants. He's carrying on. Of course, he wants us to stop talking about it. Let him just carry on seizing the country.
It's just appalling.
Which is what he's doing, you know.
But is it true that he's very ill? I keep on hearing these rumours.
People say that. I mean, who the hell knows? All I do know is he is razing cities to the ground, literally destroying them.
Worse than Hitler.
Like he did in... Yes, he is.
Worse than Hitler.
He's up there with Hitler.
Yeah,
and I think his aspiration is to seize Ukraine and then to try and seize other countries.
Oh, of course.
And he has
Next
to be
stop,
stopped.
Finland.
Yeah.
Norway.
What do you make of Partygate, Boris Johnson? You know Boris Johnson. You've been at parties with Boris Johnson.
Yeah, he was my boss once when he was...
At the Spectator?
When he was the Spectator, yeah. What do I think of it? I have to say I haven't really gotten involved in it totally, but I haven't exactly seen, you know, fizzing bottles of champagne and and people sitting down. To me, a party is people sitting down.
Well, they had a few big
ones.
Ones. I mean, he may
they
not have
really
been...
did? I haven't read them.
There have been some big ones, and they were vomiting and fighting and breaking
nice.
stuff. Yeah, but
I don't go to parties where
ultimately,
people
it's not
vomit.
about parties. What it's about the fact that they were doing all this, breaking the laws they had made, and everybody else, including the Queen, who at Philip's funeral had to sit on her own because she wanted to obey the rules. And the night before, they were partying in Downing Street till 4 a.m., which I think is unforgivable.
Well, I do too. I think it's terrible. But what are you going to do? I mean, you're going to get rid of Boris. Who are you going to bring in?
Actually, yes, I do, actually.
Rayner?
I do think when a Prime Minister breaks their own rules and gets fined by the police for it during a pandemic, that's a resignation offence. It used to be. In the old days, men would fall on their sword as a matter of honour. I don't think he knows how to spell the word.
Well, who do you suggest then is our next Prime Minister?
Somebody that can restore a bit of integrity and trust.
Somebody. Who's the somebody?
There's always somebody.
There's never,
Every time you think
I don't think there's a
no
somebody.
leader is irreplaceable.
No,
I mean, you are, but you're irreplaceable. I'm not.
I don't know about that.
Let me talk to you about another thing. Wimbledon today has announced that they're removing from the honours board Ms. and Miss before the names of previous winners. They want to make it gender neutral. What are your thoughts?
I think that's just the way everything's going, isn't it?
But why?
What about the men?
Well, the men, they just call them, N. Djokovic.
It's just something that's been going on, and it's something to me that, since Emily Pankhurst, women have fought for equal rights. So I suppose this is them saying, well, this is equal rights, the men.
What if they say to you, right, you
absolute.
can't be called a dame anymore because it's too female a title?
Well, they haven't said that to me.
But what if they did? What if they came for your damehood?
I just threw it to them.
You wouldn't. You love being a dame, don't you?
I love being a dame. I mean, it's very flattering. In Britain, particularly, because people know what it is. In the rest of the country, they don't know. I mean, in the rest of the world, in America, the dame is, something from Damon Runyon.
That's what Frank Sinatra used to call his girlfriends.
Yeah, you're a dame. Yeah, and of course, in Europe, like in France, Percy sometimes says to somebody, it's Dame Jungle, dame. Yeah, they think this is... No, I like it, of course, but I'm very old-fashioned.
But when you see this debate where politicians can't even say what a woman is now, what do you make?
Now we're not going to get on that subject. I do not approve of people saying that. Of course not, because it's just not fair. It's not right. And
what is the answer to that question?
I do not wish to get cancelled by the trans community. No. Thank you very much.
No, but what is a woman?
What is a woman? Me. Celia, her over there. There's plenty of us.
I mean, but are you worried that in this trans debate, because I support trans rights to fairness
and
equality.
So do I, of course.
I just don't like the attack on women's rights that some of the activists are driving, where you have in sport this apparent unfairness now going on. I mean, what do you think when you see that?
Well, I don't watch sport.
No, but you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I know what you're talking about, yes, and I know what you want me to say.
I don't want you to say anything.
Yes,
I never
of course you
dreamed
do.
to tell you what to say.
Yes, you want me to agree with you.
No, I don't. This is uncensored, Michelle.
Well, of course it's uncensored. I think that a person should be who they feel that they are and who they... But I do believe... I can't say this. I can't say this. No, I can't.
Why? You feel like you can't because you may get into trouble?
I can't because I don't want to get hate mail.
You see, but you've gone through your entire career saying exactly what you always think.
No, I haven't.
Yes, you have.
No,
I've read your diary.
I've never gotten into the politics of biology.
Okay.
No, I haven't.
Well, I understand why people don't want to go there. Yeah.
Well, yes, I don't want to go there.
Talking of biology, what about Madonna, who's auditioning for a new boy toy?
You're kidding.
She is.
No, you've just made that up.
No, she's apparently...
Really?
She wants him to be hard-bodied.
What do you mean?
Hard-bodied and young.
Oh, that's right. We were with her son, Rocco, last summer.
Oh.
And he said, my mother says that she will not sleep with anybody over the age of 25. I said, no, Rocco, you're kidding.
Well, that's never been your rule, has it?
No, I don't have rules. Rules. I'm very happily married with 20 years. You didn't come to our anniversary party.
I wasn't here, as you know. I was in Australia.
I know.
It was a fantastic party. And the great Percy's, as he always is, he's lurking in the wings like a protective knight.
Don't say that word, lurking. He's standing
like a protective knight. Look at him.
Standing. He saved me from the most embarrassing wardrobe malfunction at the party. Yes, I was talking to Richard Arnold, your friend.
Oh, yeah.
And he was terribly funny. He made me laugh. And the whole zipper in the back of my dress went.
No.
And I'm sitting there with it completely gaping open. And there's loads of photographers. It was a big party. And I said to Percy, I don't know what to do. I know there was another dress I was possibly going to wear. Because the theme was red, white, or blue. Because it was a Jubilee party. So I said, the white dresses that I left in the wardrobe, do you think you could bring it? So he went off. Luckily, we don't live too far away, and I changed into another dress.
And we were spared, well, what would have been perhaps a delightful incident.
I had to sit there for at least half an hour. And I had a huge feather boa, which I kept on putting on Christopher Biggins around his neck. He really liked that. And But it was
fantastic. Dame Joan, I've got to leave it there.
Good.
But it was a wonderful interview. It's great to see you. And I
it's
cannot wait to see you in your Jag on Sunday. And the Platinum Jubilee is going to be amazing.
Oh, yes, I'm going to see you there. See you around.
I'll see you there.
Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, I'm seeing you for dinner tomorrow night.
Oh,
I'm a lucky guy.
New restaurant.
And dinner with Joan Collins, let me tell you, is hilarious. Lovely to see you.
Great to see you.